Hey guys, I'm here today with a very interesting gentleman. I'll allow you to introduce yourself, mate.
All right, so I guess that's me. My name's Cameron. I met Dehardt when we were both kind of performing a bit of magic. We shared a bit of an interest in the idea of how the mind can believe and experience what it wants to believe. And since then, I've been studying a bit of psychology and delving into a bit of philosophy and all kinds of other areas that the universe has sprung upon me in the years.
That's right. So I thought we'll take the time today to allow anybody that would like to listen to some of the stuff that we perhaps may be talking about today. We've already had some very interesting discussions, and that was the point that we sort of said, hey, well, hang on, let's just go back to what Nintendo taught us, that is anything that's not saved will be lost. So let's just get this recording and let's see if there's anything interesting coming out of this. Now, there's a couple of points that we've been talking about, and there's one particular interesting word which Cameron, that you mentioned before, and I think it was Kairos, about the Tao. So perhaps just enlighten me, man. What's all of that about?
That's right. So Kairos, Kairos, was kind of the sister concept in ancient Greece regarding time. Now, the other word, of course, being chronos, which was the linear aspect of time. One event follows another. Kairos has been, I suppose, largely forgotten in this culture, but what it is it's apparently the instant where everything happens. It's the instant in which an opportunity arises, and you must make concerted effort. You have to drive through that opportunity with force to realize what's on the other side, or you can choose not to pursue it, and this might happen in any decision making.
So is it like a point of the point of now, the point where something might converge one way, but it might diverge another way as well? So is it the moment of choice?
That's right.
Okay.
The moment of choice and follow through. So it's kind of like the fifth dimensional reality, where you have continually a tree that continually branches, and you can only kind of choose one path. But at that exact branch, there is a moment where you have to make the decision and then drive through it for that to happen. Maybe it's choosing to pull out at an intersection before a string of cars, or you see a pretty girl and you decide, I have to make these moves now, otherwise this opportunity may never come again.
Yeah.
Much like another concept in the Japanese culture, I believe it's ichigo ichi-e, which is roughly translated to one time, one meeting, that every experience only happens once, and it's to be treasured.
Go on, go see what it is, go. And that moment will be treasured as well, because we're looking after a treasure at the moment. This is not my beautiful beast, but this is my sister's beast, and we're looking after her for a while, and she's been enjoying keeping us company as well. Now, Japanese philosophies. Ichigo ichi-e. One moment, one chance. One moment, one meeting, one...
Yeah, one time, one meeting, roughly speaking.
Yeah, okay, cool.
YOLO.
You only live once. I'm sure there's a lot of us that can... Okay, so at what point then, if we continuously adhere to this philosophy that it's the moment where you're making a choice, I mean, that starts to put a tremendous amount of pressure on you for saying, hey, well, it's only ever going to happen once. What if I do the wrong thing? What if I'm not making the right choice? What then if this choice is the choice that I'm going to be regretting for the rest of my life? What's any takes on on having to deal with those pressures?
Well, I suppose that comes down to your own personal philosophy.
Right.
But ideally, once that decision is made and you go down that path, continually new episodes will continue to occur. And it's what you make out of the following opportunities that determines whether that was a useful choice to you. And also, it's about learning. If you feel like that choice wasn't the right one, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be horrible from it necessarily, but if that choice or anything similar might come up in the future, you can take from that choice that you did make.
Yeah.
And attempt to learn from that.
And you know what? That's why I really like haircuts. I know I haven't had one for a while, but the thing with a haircut is you've always got opportunity to try something new and try something different, and it doesn't matter if it's not a good one, because the great thing is that 6 weeks later you can go have another one, so you have another go at it. So no, that's really cool, man. Now, one of the other things that we spoke about before, and before we go there, perhaps it's quite interesting with what you're talking about with the pressures that's associated. That perhaps comes as your own philosophy, knowing that you have to make a decision. Because I know, for instance, with some of the sleight of hand stuff, a lot of the times it's about actually putting false pressure on somebody to essentially have a little bit of a perception here, so that there's opportunity to do something elsewhere, or whether it be then a forced decision. So that then ultimately comes down to, well, hey, who's really in control here?
That's right.
Who's really and I think science has been so clear about this, is that there's really essentially no out there. So everything is in here, but all of it, if everything is then just something that's happening, who is the one that's, everything's like a movie, right? That we're continuously watching, continuously experiencing and creating our own realities at the same time, because whatever we are interacting with, we're shaping it, and in turn that shapes us back. Where does that, who's ultimately creating the creator? And I suppose that's a little bit of then the a deep philosophical internal question that can be really confusing to myself, and perhaps some other people as well. What do you think, man?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that every experience you have does have an effect on you.
Yep.
And
agreed.
To a lesser or greater extent may change you, may alter the decisions that you make in the future. But I think each of us has levels of how much commitment we want to give to our decisions,
right.
to our life.
Yep.
So you might have a job that you don't like, but you go to it 9 to 5 every day, and on the weekends you perhaps go to the beach, take the dog for a walk, whatever it is. But you're perhaps in a state where you feel like you're repeating your weekly routine constantly, and there's not many new decisions that come up. You go to the supermarket and decide what you're having for dinner, but even that doesn't change much. And
all creatures of habit, creatures of patterns that have run before.
And so at that point, you're kind of deciding that you don't want bold new experiences to particularly change you. From that point of view, I would say that that's fine, and that as animals is the safest route. But as humans, possibly we've got an opportunity to actually go a bit further and make riskier decisions and take those opportunities when they arise to grow our minds in a greater way than the experience which shape us without choosing to take those opportunities.
Sure, definitely. I get it. Go get him. Okay, so it's quite interesting then, we're talking, as you've as you've correctly said, it's as from an animal standpoint, it's safest because we're all essentially then creatures of habit, knowing that everything that we've done before has taught us, has constructed our, dare we call them modalities, our way that we experience everything, and what then becomes our frame of reality and our frame of reference, and then how we build these little boxes that we've been talking about before, and it's based on those boxes that we're able to relate to other things. Now, a lot of times, it's a shame, but we are actually, unfortunately, no longer in control. And this is like, somebody, perhaps you've got something that's been a sensitive subject to you, where you've been teased as a child about something. So the moment that anybody sort of steps on that, it's like a little hot button, and that immediately, that one particular instance then triggers all these emotions that's been built up. Well, like what we were talking about before, how that neurons that fire together wire together. So now you've got one particular thing that's now just triggered a cascade of reactions that are happening due to this particular thing, and it's really out of our control. And it's quite interesting then how everything that we've experienced has built us up to who we are now. And I think that's what very much I was so pleased with when you and I started talking, how since the last time we chatted, our experiences has very much separately directed us towards a very similar point and a very similar end result, which is an idea that's started to form. So tell me a little bit about more your take on this idea that's started.
Very well. So as a magician, I notice how people can be captivated by it.
Right.
In the same way that you might be captivated by a great musician on stage, or watching a BMX rider do a triple backflip over a 30-foot gap. And entertainment and captivation is one thing. With magic, you do get the added wonder effect, the added suspension of belief. But unless you're taking it way too seriously as a close-up magician using various methods, at the end of the day, people do see it as an entertainment. What would be awesome is if, instead of it only being an entertainment, if we could also link in gems of knowledge, whereby the entertainment is what almost pulls people in, what gets people's attention. But at the core of it, there is in fact worthwhile lessons to be learned from this collective of people. Obviously, one person can't do it all, but there's a lot of talent, and a lot of people have talents in different areas, and a lot of people have really interesting ideas in different areas. This is why we have so many books about so many different things. But a lot of people don't, especially in this generation, like reading books. They're time-consuming. And with how easily accessible YouTube is now, and downloading movies,
I'll share with you quickly, man. I enjoy reading. I absolutely love reading. There's a couple of tools that I use to absorb information via various different mediums, essentially. The first little hack that I'll quickly share with you, straight for reading. If it's content that I'm pulling off of the internet, that's written content, I use a website that's called Spreeder. So literally speed reading, Spreeder, or speed reader, Spreeder. And it's basically, it's a tool whereby you can copy and paste any amount of text, and you can set it up so that it flashes 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words at a time at a certain speed. And it takes a little bit of practice to be able to learn how to utilize it fully. But I've literally gotten it to the point now where I can take 2 words at a time, and I get those words to flash to me roughly at about 1,200 words a minute, and you're no longer trying to read it, but my retention and my recall afterwards is upwards of 90%. So that's being able to actually get that information in without trying to consciously interfere with it, which becomes phenomenal. So that's a really, really nice method of doing that. The second one is you were talking about reading books. Now, it's great that we live in an information age where there's one particular company that's been pioneering it lots, and that company is called Audible, and they are very, very much into creating their vision and their dream is to every single written piece needs to be in audio format. Man, now audiobooks I love because I drive a lot everywhere, so my driving time is audiobook time, and I will go through continuously. And some of these narrators, they speak beautifully, and they really are able to embody the essence of what the original writer was trying to express within that. And it's quite nice because then you're always getting another frame of reference of interesting the particular tonalities that the narrator chooses to use in order to express it, like both from a fictional and a non-fictional side. So for instance, if you guys are interested in a good non-fictional, I would recommend the first one to try is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. There are some absolute beautiful gems in that one, little hidden bits and pieces about the cruel nature of the world that we're all aware of, but that none of us like to talk about. Really, really interesting. Have a go at it. That's the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Now, anyway, sorry. So coming back to this conversation that you were talking about, creating a moment, using whether it be performers, entertainers, extreme athletes, putting together, and within that, putting in a particular embedded learning. Now, I will definitely choose to use the word learning as opposed to teaching, because teaching or training means that you're trying to put information into somebody, whereas learning means that somebody is acquiring the information. That's right. It's essentially physically, biochemically, neurologically, scientifically impossible for me to teach you anything.
Right.
But you can learn stuff.
And it's much more effective if it becomes, if it's an intrinsic.
Exactly right.
interest.
And that's when you can create almost that moment of that's why I absolutely love the idea of awe. Creating a moment of awe, like literally where you have to reconfigure your models of how you perceive stuff in order to assimilate that bit of information. And where it's like literally like your constructs of reality, essentially, it's like that mind-blown experience. You know what I mean? So if we can create that, building up the moment. I mean, these guys over in the States that have got a tremendous amount of resource because they're lucky enough to have a VC, backing by venture capitalists that are just pouring money into it, and they're creating what they deem to be flow dojos. So it's like literally a place of training in order to train to enter into flow states more regularly, more actively, and staying there longer. Now, I mean, a flow state is the most elusive state known to man, easier than ever to get there, impossible to stay there. And it's I think flow is the reason why when you're talking about musicians, flow is the reason why we would pay $120 to go to a concert to see a musician on stage, because we know that when we go and see that musician on stage, chances are he's going to be entering into a flow state. And it's by that flow state that he does what he does so well, that he does what he does different and better in the way that anybody else can do it. It's the reason why an extreme athlete can do some of the goodies that they do, like a kayaker, an extreme kayaker going over a 250-foot waterfall, because it's either he flows or he dies. You know what I mean? And that's when things become so precise. So it's literally, and that's what I loved what you said about your about this idea of setting everything up in such a way that we are able to create these moments of awe, these moments of learning, these moments of bits and pieces. So, what do you think, man?
One other note on that subject is the idea of the Tao, the ancient Eastern philosophy. The idea that kind of everything that follows is the outcome of the initial events. Now, that's not saying that everything is predetermined. In fact, kind of the opposite. And saying that in every moment we create the next moment.
Yeah, I like it.
And you are always in control of your decision at that moment. Now, as entertainers, we can lead you towards the opportunity to make the decision.
Right.
You can choose whether to connect or to disconnect from an idea. To follow through, you can choose to be enlightened by an idea or possibly inspired by a great musician or author or whatever it may be that inspires you. And from that point, it may take you in a completely different direction. I'm sure many of you have recalled a time when you've read something or heard something or seen some art, or could be almost anything, seen a good deed done on the street, and afterwards it's had possibly a subtle or a profound change on you. And I think it's almost our job as entertainers to be able to offer these moments where you can choose to take it in and be inspired by it. That's what it.
Perhaps then that'll be a great way for us to finish this discussion. I see you've got a pack of cards over there. Is there a moment that you could share with the camera?
Pack of cards, eh? Alright, yeah, we'll try something. What to do? Take a pack of cards. Now, just to be sure, all these cards are different.
And I'm literally putting him on the spot now. There's no hidden agenda here, and that really now is your choice as to what you think about that.
All right. You know what we could do? If all goes according to plan, Dehardt, would you for us just say stop anytime?
Stop.
Are you sure?
Happy?
You take your card. Don't show it to me. Show it to our lovely audience, though. Yep. All right. Got it locked in.
Locked in.
Memorized. You guys got it locked in. Put it back. Okay. Now we're going to try this. It's a little bit of a thought experiment. Just put these away for a moment. There are people who say that they can tap in.
Yep.
To your mind and actually pick out the objects or words, pictures in your mind.
With what happens in the throat. I'm with you.
Sure. Sometimes, you can form words, but there's non-verbal ways to communicate language.
Yep.
And some people think that you can actually tap into the brainwaves if you get on the same frequency, and you can get impressions. Now, you may not get full sentences or objects, but you'll get impressions of things. So I've been kind of working on this with greater or lesser success, but we'll try something here. Do you have that card memorized?
Clearly.
All right. I bring with me something I prepared. So we're going to have to have a bit of a play with this. We'll bring these cards back. I want you just to look at these cards and try not to give it away too much if you see it. It was there?
It was there.
Okay, cool. We'll do this.
See that? That was a straight poker face.
Okay. I'm going to pick one card out at random. This one here. The Eight of Hearts. Now, I'm hoping that would be quite amazing if that was your card. Was it your card?
But no, it wasn't. No,
Okay,
no,
cool.
no, sorry.
But
okay,
that
fluke would have been fantastic, though.
We'll take the Eight of Hearts just like this. And we'll just try and shake these Four of Hearts off.
Perfect.
Was that it?
That was it, man.
Okay, cool.
Lovely. Well, there we go. I hope that something that we said resonated with someone there, and if it didn't, then it's all your fault because you didn't listen.
It's your choice, though.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right, cheers, guys. Thanks. Ta-da.